Welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys for hanging with me on this Tuesday. And if you've taken some time out of your busy schedules to support my channel with likes or comments, I really do appreciate that. All right, so I run a 5-inch Lowrance DSI on the front, just shows me down scan, and I run a 7 HDS Lowrance on my steering. I swivel this every time I get off the big motor and run up to the front of the boat so I can see it from the front of the boat. I wear contact lenses, so I have pretty good vision, and this is my mapping, and then I run my down scan on the front, and I can see the contours on the map, and then I can see what is actually on the bottom of the lake with my front graph that is only 5 inches. Now, if you've seen professional fishermen's boat, you've seen any guy's boats nowadays, it seems like everyone's running multiple screens. They're doing a bunch of things, and forward-facing sonar is a big part of that, obviously. But before forward-facing sonar, guys were running 4 graphs, 5 graphs. So this is nothing new, but I want to basically tell you what I've witnessed fishing with less screens than everyone else and competing against the big dogs of the fishing world with less electronics. I actually started my pro fishing career on the Toyota series back in 2016 without a graph on the front or no mapping on the back. And that was stupid, I will say. That was pretty dumb. You very well could have run over something and you know, not knowing where I was going a lot of times sometimes helped, but most of the time did not. But I want to be very clear how I feel about all of this electronics. And if you have a smaller graph or a setup kind of like mine on your boat and you cannot wait to get bigger graphs, I want to give you some advice on what I've seen happen to other fishermen. So every guy has a style. My style originated in Florida, where no one has big graphs on their boats, or back when I lived there, no one had big graphs. You know, most of the fishing was just felt out with rod and reel. You showed up on the grass lines, you fished the grass, you could see them, everything was visible, so you really didn't need mapping. And basically what we used our depth finders for was nothing more than that, was to just know the depth and maybe the bottom consistency, but very minimal part in catching fish in Florida. I think things have changed. More people have figured out that offshore bite, and a lot more fishing goes down offshore, but up to like 2014 when I lived there, most of the fishing was done shallow in the grass. Now, 2014 was a big changing point for a lot of guys. Tournaments started being dominated offshore. That was because of side imaging and down imaging. People were graphing big schools of fish, especially where I live now on the Tennessee River, and that was dominant. And I got to be a co-angler on the FLW Tour during those times, and I got to witness how big of a deal that was. And this lasted for really only a couple of years. 2014, 2015, it seemed like you could graph all day, find schools, catch 100 off of one spot. These lakes were loaded with mega schools. By like the summer of 2016, that had all changed. It became really tough. Once you idled over a group of fish, you saw them and you fished for them, they were hard to catch. By like 2017, 2018, when you would idle over a group of fish, not only would they not fire up when you started catching them, they would leave. You would go, I just saw 30 fish here. You would idle over them again and they would be gone. So I got to witness that. I got to watch the heyday and then a part where it was just hurting people, and it all happened within 2 years. So my biggest takeaway from electronics is, until you learn it and put all your eggs in that basket and become that type of fisherman, it really is a gimmick. Now, there are times a year where you need to graph brush piles. There are times a year where it's obvious that the fish are on stumps and you got to go look for stumps. And there are times a year where you may fish the bank for a week and not hardly catch anything. The obvious answer would be to go out deep. But the other side of that coin is you are going to rely on your electronics, and you're going to show up to lakes thinking you need to use your electronics when maybe your strongest fishing asset is what is really playing that week, and you just didn't put enough eggs in that basket. And what I mean by that, let's say you're a flipper and a pitcher. You like to flip, or let's say you like to throw a frog. And flipping and frogging is the deal. You go to a lake where you think this is an offshore lake. Every time that these tournaments have been to this lake for the last 5 years, it's been an offshore thing, so I'm just going to go offshore fishing. And everyone knows that. Everyone does that. And it's all about flipping and frogging. That's what dominates. And that might be your strongest suit, and you just didn't do it because you relied on your electronics. So for me, I get very little information before I show up to a lake. I fished as a co-angler for quite a few years. I fished from the front of the boat on lakes all over the state of Alabama, Georgia, Florida. So I got a pretty good feel. Like if we go to Lake Eufaula or Lake Martin, I've been to those lakes half a dozen times. If we go to any lakes in Florida, I've been to those lakes 20 times or more. And all along the Tennessee River, I've been to these lakes half a dozen times at least. So for that reason, I have a pretty good feel for the way the fish set up, and I don't necessarily have to rely on my electronics. Now, they help. I think this 7 with a really good mapping chip in it is critical for me to go out there and just get an idea of what the fish are doing. Now, I don't rely fully on that. A lot of times I am going to go to the bank and look shallow, and the mapping chip does, very little good in those regards. But it is one of those things where if I show up to a lake and the fish are on the bank, they're shallow, I'm going to be really good in that tournament. But you got to look at the other side of that is if they're not, and I spend my whole tournament looking shallow, or my whole week rather looking shallow, it's going to be a struggle. But the good thing about that is it is still a strong suit of mine, and it's rare that we ever go to a lake where there's not at least enough shallow to win my money back in a tournament if I'm fishing a tournament. So my whole point with this is I've seen so many guys who were phenomenal co-anglers, won a ton of money, won boats as co-anglers, and when they decided to go to the front of the boat, they got the rig that looks just like Kevin Van Dam's boat, 3 graphs on the front, graphs all over the back, power poles and everything. They forgot what got them to the dance. What got them there was being a phenomenal finesse fisherman, being a great drop shot fisherman. They don't do that anymore. They rely on those graphs, or not doing what they've spent a decade or multiple decades doing, and what makes them a great fisherman. They've lost all that. So my biggest advice to you guys, if you're not happy with the electronics you got and you want to upgrade, you want to get something bigger and better, don't forget about all the things that make you a great fisherman. I've seen this with too many people. You've got to rely on your strengths. You've got to fall back, and maybe even not just fall back, but start and just put all your eggs in that basket. If electronics does happen to help however you fish, then upgrade, do whatever you need to do. But I'm telling you, there are times when they're not going to help. They're going to get in the way, and it's very important to always have that in the back of your head. So good luck to you guys. I'll see you on the water. Thanks for watching.